I'm your host, Dawn Cross, and today I'll be discussing HR practices for small businesses with Michael Millward, podcast host and HR expert. If you enjoy our podcast, make sure to leave a rating on your favourite podcast directory.
Cool. So if I could get you to start off, could you introduce yourself and what you get up to within your company?
Well, thank you very much for inviting me along. It's great. My name is Michael Millward. I am a human resources professional. I have been a human resources professional for a very long time. I have worked in the UK, most of the European Union, the Middle East, West Africa, Asia, Australia, North America, and I've covered all sorts of different sizes of organizations, from new startups to rapidly growing organizations, large conglomerates, and at all stages of growth, like I say, from startup to very well-established old organizations as well. I returned to the UK in 2001, did a master's degree in HR at the University of Wales, and then set up a company called Abeceda. The name Abeceda means to put into logical order. It also spells out ABCD, and we put employment into logical order from the perspective of both the employer and the employee, because you need to look at both sides of the relationship, and the stronger you can make that relationship, the more productive your employees will be, and as a result of that, the more profitable your organization will be as well.
That sounds really key. What made you get into HR in the first place?
The majority of people who are in HR probably didn't make a conscious decision. I went through school really wanting to be an HR professional. Didn't happen that sort of way. It was more a case of I left school and went looking for a job and ended up with a few offers, and just sort of worked my way through a pros and cons list of which one to take. It wasn't really getting into HR. It was like, well, which one of these jobs is going to pay me the most? Which one of these jobs is going to be easiest to get to? You're leaving school. If I have that job, I'll be able to afford a car that little bit quicker. All those sorts of things were what got me into HR. Why I stayed in it was, I think it's fascinating. Somebody once said to me, to be a decent HR professional, you've got to be interested in how and why people work, what it is that they do, how they do it, why they do it, how you can make them or encourage them to do more of the work that you want them to do. And like I say, the whole logic of Abeceda is that we need to understand the individual employee and what it is that they want to get from their relationship with their employer and the time that they spend with them. And if we can understand more of that, then we can make them happier, we can make them more productive, we can make the organizations more profitable. And that's the role of an HR person. It's not tea and sympathy or nice all the time. I have a role as an HR professional to make those organizations more productive. But it's that keeps me in it, is like just the sheer fascination of the what and the how of why people go to work. For example, is why do people go to jobs that they don't like? How many people do you see like breaking the speed limit on their way to work every morning, and you're thinking like, but do they actually enjoy the job that they're going to? What makes people do that? What makes people go to work for a job that they don't like? There's all sorts of different things, but it is just that sheer fascination with why people work.
That's really amazing. What are some of the things that are overlooked in like a small to medium business? Obviously, they don't necessarily have a proper HR person at that moment, especially if they are upscaling slow but surely. What are some things that are overlooked that obviously really shouldn't be overlooked, because obviously it can put the business and other people technically into a quandary or problem?
Well, one of the ways in which I could answer this question would be in giving you a long list of all the different HR related legislation that people overlook and the problems that actually causes for organizations. But there's something that happens way before that happens, and that's people who set up businesses very often don't actually work out how it is that their organization, their business will grow, at what point it is that they're going to need additional help in order to make that growth happen, what that help will look like, then you start to get into all of the various different things that need to be planned before you recruit somebody into your business. So it's the thing that gets overlooked before anything else gets overlooked is the planning to be an employer, the planning of how that is all going to fit together and actually help you to grow the business. You don't employ people to then have to spend a large proportion of your working day managing those people. And if you don't plan their recruitment, if you don't plan what you're going to do with those people, then you are going to spend a lot of time managing those people. And that's the thing that gets overlooked, that planning stage of why do I want this person? What am I going to do with this person?
Definitely. What would you say would maybe be some good steps to help improve employee success? Superficial incentives may not go very well. How can a company invest in their employees?
It's a really good question. You have got some very good questions for me today. Thank you very much.
It's okay.
When you talk about employee benefits, a lot of it ends up being rather superficial and a novelty. And I think it's things like thank yous go an awful long way. When you look at the reasons why people leave, and I suppose the answer to this question is not about what makes people join or what makes people stay. The answer to the question comes in the reasons why people leave. If you can understand the reasons why people are leaving your organization, or the reasons why people are coming in late, the reasons why people are taking days off, if you can understand those, then you can get to the point where you can understand what you need to do in order to make people more motivated. It sounds daft, but you have to almost identify the negative things because those are messages that you're getting from your employees, and then take the steps to counter the negatives. That is where you will understand your employees better. And if they're leaving, then your soon to be or actual former employees. And those are the things that you need to then act on in order to make people more productive in your organization. People don't leave organizations, people don't leave jobs. 9 times out of 10, he said, exaggerating to make the point, people leave managers. It's the way in which people are managed that encourage them to leave. You can do an awful lot by adopting the standards like investors in people. That mean that you are telling people what it is that you want them to do. You are giving them the skills and knowledge in order to do that. And you are training them. You are giving them feedback. You are telling them when they've done something well. You're telling them when they've done something less well as well.
Definitely. I definitely agree. So obviously, you're normally the one interviewing others because you have an amazing podcast going on. Could you tell me a bit more about that?
Well, yes, we have 4 podcasts which are produced by Abacida. The first one is called the Abacida Quotation Conversations. That one is published by a company called Bookboon. We have an audience of around 3 million people for that. That is an audio learning program in which we discuss a quotation that is important to our guest and work out what it is that they have learned from that quotation and what it is that other people might learn from it as well. That was so successful that we then looked at other issues that might benefit from having some additional content produced around them. And we've always, as Abacida from day one, been very proactive in creating content, initially in editorial form, and then podcasts, and now webinars as well. We launched a podcast called The Independent Minds, which looks at how people have faced a problem at work, thought outside the box, thought independently about it, and come up with a solution. And then we discussed that solution and how they implemented that solution. We then looked at the issue of work-life balance and have created a podcast called Rest and Recreation, which gives people ideas about what they could do with the extra time that they get from working flexibly, working 4 days a week, working term time hours, all these sorts of things. What are you going to do with that extra time that you have if you are just going to be going, oh, I'll take longer in the shops, or I'll go to the pub, or these sorts of things? It's where is the benefit in that long term? So having a hobby enhances your lifestyle, which means you'll be happier, which means you have a positive impact on every aspect of your life. And then the fourth one is called Fit for My Age, which looks at health and well-being and all the various different issues that are associated with that, everything from different types of exercise that you can take to various different illnesses, conditions, diseases that we don't know about unless they affect us, or cover off all sorts of issues, from understanding things like sugar, understanding different types of exercises or sports, and even things like how to have a healthy relationship with food.
Oh, wow. So you're a very busy bee.
We have always, as Abeceda, looked at the issue of saying that you have a relationship between an employer and an employee. And the key thing about that relationship is that, unfortunately, in too many organizations, that relationship is based upon outdated approaches to that relationship. So in King William IV's time, the monarch before Queen Victoria, Parliament passed an act which came into law, which is called the Master and Servant Act, and that determined the relationship that people would have at work as a result of people moving from agriculture into factories. So how are the factories going to be managed? It was the piece of legislation that meant that if you joined a trade union, you could be transported to Australia. A piece of legislation which meant that if you disobeyed your manager, you could end up in a magistrate's court and end up in prison. Now, that piece of legislation is superseded by all sorts of various different things since, and that law doesn't apply very much. But the terminology, master and servant, is something that has only in the last 5-10 years has been used in Parliament, in the House of Commons, and is still something that is an attitude in some organizations as to what the relationship between an employer and an employee is. It's master and servant. I don't believe that that is an appropriate relationship for a 21st century organization. When you look at how people who are joining the workforce, the Gen Zs, the millennials, even people of my great generation, are no longer sort of just going into work and expecting to be told what to do. We want to be involved in how our organization operates. We want to be asked questions. We want to be challenged. It's not just a case of, you tell me what to do, tell me when to do it, I do it, then I go home, then the next day we repeat. The pace of change in organizations across the board is so rapid now that you can't expect a small management team to know everything and to come up with all of the answers. You are going to need the active involvement, to use an HR expression, active engagement of your employees in developing the organization. You can't do that if you have a master and servant attitude. So our attitude at Abeceda has always been that we need to increase the level of knowledge amongst employees of all of the things that managers get told. In terms of, a manager goes away on a training course to learn how to manage people, but no one ever gets sent on a training course to learn how to be managed. Our content generation, whilst it is fun to do, and we hope it's entertaining and educational to listen to or to watch or to read, our content is aimed at balancing out that relationship and helping people to understand what it takes to be a good employee so that they can be successful in whatever job it is that they have, and then contribute to those organizations, so those organizations are more successful. So there is a very definite purpose to the content that we create.
That sounds amazing. Do you have anything else to add before we wrap up the episode?
I think that one of the things that is important that I would just emphasize again is that whether you're starting out as an employer or you are thinking about increasing your workforce, you have to almost go back to the basics again and rethink your organization, rethink, why am I taking this person on? What am I going to do with them when they first start? What am I going to be hoping to be able to do with them in 6 months' time, in a year's time, in 6 years' time? How am I going to build that relationship so that through the good times and the bad times, we are going to be working together rather than as a master and servant. What do we do to ensure that we work together to build an organization for everybody's benefit? And you'll find things much more productive.
That sounds really key. Well, thank you so much for talking to me about all things HR. Well, a small pocket of it anyway.
A small, very, very small pocket. There is nothing so dynamic and diverse as HR within any organization, because it changes with every single person on the payroll.
Definitely.
Thank you very much for inviting me, Dawn. It's been great. I've enjoyed it very much. Thank you.
Thank you to my guest today, Michael, for chatting about his expertise and experience in HR. If you're interested in his podcasts or services, please click the links in the description. I have been your host, Dawn Cross, and tune in next week for another episode. Insync is one of the UK's fastest growing insurance providers, offering comprehensive cover for SMEs and the self-employed across the UK. Our expert team can tailor your insurance to meet your individual business needs and compare prices from our Lloyd's of London approved partners. We offer a 5-star service and have been FIFO Platinum Trusted winners 5 years in a row.